Well, howdy friends. I wanted to make a quick video today to talk about something. And many of you don't know, but I'm an aspiring bass player. I've been an aspiring bass player now for about 35 years, going on 36 now. And I've always loved it. I started out playing the mandolin, and I still play mandolin. I love the mandolin and I'll always be a mandolin player. And then about 5 years later, I started playing guitar, and I love guitar. I still play guitar and mandolin a lot today. In fact, the situations I'm in with bands most of the time, or people that I play with in this area of the country, requires me most of the time to play guitar or mandolin, and usually both. You know, I switch off back and forth. But I still love playing bass, and in fact, I was on a show the other night where our bass player had to cancel, and it was a pretty big show. There were several musicians, like a 6-piece band, I think it was, and the bass player had something else that they had actually double booked, I think. So we ended up not having a bass player, and we went through a whole list of people we could think of to fill in on bass, you know, play bass for us, and nobody could do it. They were already booked, you know, and had something else going. So I thought, I want to suggest I could play bass, you know, so I finally did. And I really enjoyed it. This was this past Saturday night. I played electric bass. I know a lot of you are thinking, what? Electric bass? I thought this channel was more of acoustic oriented channel, and for the most part it is. But you know, when I was growing up as a kid, electric bass was pretty prominent in bluegrass back in the day. And you know, we had groups like Newgrass Revival, we had Bluegrass Cardinals, Virginia Squires, Hot Rise. A lot of those groups used electric bass. Osborne Brothers was using electric bass back in the day. So I really liked the sound of electric bass in a lot of those bands. And what's funny, I know a lot of the old timers back in that day, you know, they didn't like electric bass at all. In fact, I would hear some of them at bluegrass festivals. They would say, yeah, that's a pretty good band, but that old electric bass just ruins everything. You know, it ain't no good because it's got that old electric bass in it. And but I'm going to tell you, I do love acoustic bass just as much as electric bass, you know, and neither one of them are good if they're not played well, you know, just like any instrument. But I really enjoyed this show the other night, and I hadn't played bass in a long time, and I played this bass on it. It's a copy of a Music Man bass made by a company called Sire, S-I-R-E. As you can see, it's pretty much just like the Music Man setup down there with a big humbucking pickup. The headstock is a little different, but you know, the Music Mans have like 3 on one side and 1 on the other. So I guess they had to make it a little different, you know, to avoid copyright or patent issues. It's got the maple fingerboard like the Music Man basses. This is an active bass. It does have like a 3-band EQ, volume, and then 3 bands EQ, whereas the old Music Man basses, I think they just had 2-band EQ, if I'm not mistaken about that. The only problem was the other night I didn't have an amplifier, and I haven't had one in a few years. My old amplifier took out on me, and I ended up getting rid of it a few years ago. Usually when I play electric bass in the recording studio, I just use I go directly in, you know, I don't use an amp. So I hadn't needed one. So I hurriedly ordered an amp. I got a Fender Rumble amp for the show the other night. It came in the day before the show. It came in last Friday, and I plugged it up and everything. It did have a little intermittent problem, and for that reason, and I just didn't like the sound quite as much of it as I hoped I would, I end up sending it back. But I wanted to ask some of you out there that play electric bass, particularly maybe a Music Man bass, what are your favorite amplifiers? You know, a lot of my favorite players, like Ronnie Simpkins in the Virginia Squires, I believe at one time he told me he used a Gallien-Kruger amplifier. And so I looked online at Gallien-Kruger amplifiers, and there's so many of them. There's so many different models, sizes, everything. It's really confusing to know which one to look at. And the sound I like is, you know, I kind of like the Music Man growl. It's hard to explain a sound, you know, to someone, but if you go and listen to some of the videos, I know someone had posted some footage from Denton, North Carolina on YouTube of the Virginia Squires. Ronnie's playing his Music Man. It's a brown colored Music Man bass. And I really like that tone right there, like the tone he got when he played that bass. It's kind of a growly sound, presence, punch, you know. And I'm looking for an amp to deliver that too. The Fender seemed muddy to me, if I could say the first thing that popped into my mind to describe the sound. It was kind of muddy, a little overly bassy, even when I turned the bass down on the EQ of the amp itself. And like I say, I haven't played electric bass very much at all in a long time. I thought it would be fun to jump in there and to get to play it again the other night, which it was. Another thing is, how do you guys that play bass set your action up? I'm sure that's got something to do with getting a growly tone too. I wish I could sit down with someone to show me this stuff like setup. I did lower the action on this bass. It come from the factory, set up pretty high, uncomfortably high for me. Of course, I've got arthritis. I've got rheumatoid and osteoarthritis. So anything I play, I have to have the action set pretty low and comfortable. I noticed Ronnie plays, I watched some of the video, he plays sometimes right over the pickup. Sometimes I notice he moves up here just a little bit, kind of in front of the pickup, and then I'll see him play right there. I know all of that has to do with the tone you get. Like I say, I'm an aspiring bass player. I've got some good tones out of one on recordings just by, you know, I keep fooling around with it till I get the sound I want on recording. But, you know, live, it's happening in the moment. You don't have time to tweak and adjust. But I know the combination of the bass, the setup, the way you play, and the amplifier has a lot to do with it. So some of you that play electric bass out there, let me know some about how you see this situation, what you do to get a kind of a growling tone. I guess another way to put it would be kind of a jazz type tone. You know, not where the bass is rolled completely off like some of the jazz players. You know, if they have a jazz bass, they roll the neck pickup completely off, and they're just playing strictly on the bridge pickup, which, you know, you don't get as much bass response that way. So it's kind of a happy medium between the two is what I'm kind of looking for. Steve Bryant's another one, I think, played a Music Man back in the day with J.D. Crowe and like with Boone Creek. So I know there's some of you guys out there from this era of bluegrass music and that have played the bass and kind of have been familiar with the way these guys set their basses up and what amplifiers they used. Also, does a combo amp, or let me rephrase that, is a combo amp what you want, or do you want an amp head that then feeds a speaker? You know, I don't know. I've never had anyone explain this stuff to me really well, so please comment below and help me out. You can really help me out on this, and I do read the comments, and I look forward to your help to see what I can learn. But I did enjoy it. It went well. I got a good bass sound. It was an outdoor show, so it was a little bit reverberatory in there. In fact, the amphitheater that we did the show in was concrete bleachers and everything. So you can imagine there was a little bit of extenuated bass because of that. But it still went well. But I still want to work on my tone. You know, it's like anything, musicians never happy, I guess, with anything. They always want to improve. But I guess that's the name of the game. You quit trying to learn and quit trying to improve. Well, you just need to stop and quit anyway. So help me out, friends. Comment below and let me know what you think. Please give me a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.